Hi everyone, welcome to another exciting video. You're watching Dynamic Chess. In today's video, I'll be talking about the Sicilian defense from the black pieces. In particular, I'll be talking about the hyper accelerated dragon move order. As you might have already noticed in the thumbnail of this video, we'll be analyzing a game played between I am Daniel Rensch versus Eugene Perelshteyn in the first half of the video. Later in the second half, we'll see how I made use of this in my own game. So without further ado, let's get started. So white opened with 1 e4, black played c5. This is the Sicilian defense as we call it. Knight f3, g6. This is the hyper accelerated dragon move order of the Sicilian defense. c4, knight c6. Now with c4, white is stopping d5 as well as a6, b5 ideas by black later in the game. So this is called the Maroczy bind, just to point out. So here black played knight c6, d4, cd4, knight e4, bishop g7, bishop e3, knight f6, and knight c3. These are pretty much the standard moves in this line. So let's see. d6, bishop e2, castle, queen d2, knight takes d4. Now why is it important to take on d4 here? Black's idea is to go bishop d7 and then place his bishop on c6. But let's say if black directly plays bishop d7 in this position, then white has the option of going with his knight back to c2 and he's avoiding this knight trade completely. Now, now this bishop here is misplaced. It not only is it misplaced, it is also blocking the queen here on this file. So which is why it is important to take on d4 before you play bishop d7. So here, after knight takes d4, bishop takes d4, you can see that black goes for his idea bishop d7, white castles, and bishop c6, hitting the e4 pawn. Now white supports it with f3, a5, and b3. This is the main line of the accelerated dragon move order. So here knight d7. Here white has a couple of options. He can either take this bishop on g7, or he can go bishop e3, knight c5, rook b1. Now this is a very typical move, rook b1 here. Uh, the main intention of playing rook b1 is to step out of any potential discoveries on this diagonal, as this bishop on g7 is very strong. So let's see. And here e6. Now I just want to point out that players who play this setup know it very well. You hardly move your e pawn here in this setup because the d6 point is very weak. D6 pawn becomes very weak. So you hardly play e6. Now black's idea of playing e6 is he wants to get his queen to h4 here. He has opened up this diagonal here, and he wants to target this soft spot on h2 or the king's side. Now since black has committed to e6 here, you can see in the next few moves very evidently that white tries to take advantage of this weak d6 pawn. So let's see. Rook d1 attacking the d6 pawn, and here bishop e5. So as I said, black not only is supporting his d6 pawn, but also his bishop is now pointing towards that soft spot here on h2. So knight b5. Now I want to point out one thing here. Why can't white just go f4 in this position? Well, as you can see, if he goes for f4, then black has bishop into c3, trading off that knight for the bishop. And after queen takes c3, there is knight e4, simply winning a central pawn, which is why black didn't go for f4. Instead, he put more pressure on the d6 point. So now black wants for queen h4, which is his plan. Now after g3, as you can see, already there is an automatic attack ready on the king side with this bishop lurking on this diagonal and this bishop being on this diagonal. As you can see, there are chances of a king side attack. So here is where GM Eugene Perelshteyn goes all in. He plays bishop g3, and after g3, queen g3 check. Now after queen g3 check, white has to really play king f1. He cannot play king h1. As you can see, If he plays king h1, then just knight e4 here in this position, and after fe4, bishop e4, you can see already it's already a deadly mating attack. So as you can see, king h1 is not safe. So king f1 is the only option, is only a continuation, where white can try few things. So here after king f1, black went for knight e4, sacrificing his knight. Now let's see some variations. What happens if we take this knight? Let's say white takes on f takes e4, then black has this very strong move f5, after which you can see if white plays ef5, then after rook f5, it's just mating. This is not the continuation white wants to go in. Also to point out that white cannot go e5 here in this position, trying to close this file of the rook. If he goes for e5, then as you can see, it's just mating 3 after bishop g2 check, king g1, bishop h3 check, king h1, and queen g2 is mate. So there's nothing really much black can do after f5. So white saw all of this, and instead of taking that knight, he just played a calm move, queen d3. Now let's see how Eugene continues from this point on. First of all, he plays f5. Now with f5, black has completely stopped the possibility of taking this knight. So white can never really take that knight. So here white went for knight d4. So white wants to get rid of some attacking pieces. This bishop is very strong on this diagonal, so white's intention is to get rid of this bishop. Black is not really worried because as you can see, after e5, knight takes c6, b takes c6. There is this armada of pawns that is coming white's way, so black is not really worried. He's very solid in this position, and the attack rages on. So let's see. Here, white went for bishop g1. Now at this point, it's very difficult to suggest any good moves for white in this position. So after bishop g1, Eugene just mobilizes his pieces. He maneuvers them to the right squares. So first of all, he plays queen h3 check. King e1 is the only move. You can see how this knight covers all the escape squares of the king on d2 and f2 here. So after king e1, he plays queen h4 check, king f1, and knight g3. You can see how he got his knight and queen onto more optimal squares than before. Now here white played king g2, black went for queen g5, again threatening to move that knight and have some discoveries. So white stepped out of it with king f2, and here he went for e4. White played queen d6. Now it's hard to suggest anything better for white here. So after queen d6, black went for e3 check, king e1, the only move, and rook e8. This is a very good move, I would say. Rook e8 is a very prophylactic move. Black just wants to stop any queen e6 check ideas here, just in case if there are any perpetual possibilities, he wants to stop those. So rook e8 is a very good move in that sense. So white went for f4 and queen h4. So at this point, white is already lost at this point, completely lost, I would say. Uh, so he took on c6, thinking that black doesn't have any good discoveries at this point, but that's not true. As you can see, Eugene just finishes off this game nicely in the next few moves. He plays knight e4 check, centralizing his knight again. And after king f1, he plays a very strong move, after which white just resigned. You can try to pause the video here in this position and try to guess the move after which white just resigned. He is completely lost. So hope you found this move, queen h1, after which white just resigned. So queen h1 is a dual purpose move. First, it is threatening to win this queen on c6, which is loose. He wants to just move his knight to g3 or to d2 and win the queen here. Another threat which black has set up with queen h1, which is to go knight g3. After knight g3, as you can see, king e1, queen g1, and bishop f1 and queen f1 is eventually mate. So here, after queen h1, white played another last check before he died on queen d5 check, and after rook f7, white just resigned. Just give me a moment. Let me load the PGN to my game quickly. So I have my PGN ready to roll. So let's see how I make use of that game which we just saw. So my opponent went for 1 e4. I replied with c5, knight f3, g6, c4, knight c6, d4, cd4, knight d4, bishop g7, bishop e3, and knight f6. As you can see, it's again the same line which we just analyzed. So knight c3, d6, bishop e2, castles, queen d2, and I just pointed out in the earlier section of this video that we need to take on d4 to play this idea of bishop d7 to bishop c6, if you remember. So after bishop d4, bishop d7, castles, bishop c6, threatening the e4 pawn. White supports it with f3, a5, b3, knight d7, bishop e3. You can see pretty much all the moves are same as the game that we just saw between Daniel Rensch and Eugene Perelshteyn. So here black went for knight c5, rook b1, e6. So I just want to point out here that if I had not, gone through the game that we just saw earlier, I would have never played this move e6 in this position, because e6 is very anti-intuitive, because your d6 pawn is weak the entire game, and dragon players usually never play e6. Since I had seen this game between Eugene and Daniel Rensch, I had tremendous confidence that e6 is playable. So I would say this is in a way one of the advantages of checking out such games. So let's see. Rook d1, bishop e5. We have seen these ideas before. So here knight b5, queen h4, again hitting h2, g3. After g3, you can see really need not calculate much here in this position, since we already know how to continue in this position. Normally, if you're planning to sacrifice some material, you need a lot of calculation. You really can't sacrifice your piece just like that. You need a lot of calculation. But since we already got that game in our mind, so we can just go for it in this position. So I went for bishop g3, head g3, and queen g3 check. Now, unlike in the game between Eugene and Daniel Rensch, here my opponent went for king h1. So after king h1, I had to calculate how to finish him off after this. So I went for knight e4. Now clearly my opponent saw that if he takes fe4, then just bishop e4, and the game is almost over. King is getting mated. Seeing all of this, he played queen e1, trying to exchange the queens. Now, there's one more important thing that I want to highlight here. When you have sacrificed some material for initiative or for a kingside attack, it is very important that you do not exchange your major pieces like your queens and rooks. It is very important that you continue to attack and avoid these exchanges. So, keeping that in mind, here I played queen h3 check. And after king g1, I get my knight into the attack. Now, after knight g3, my opponent went for bishop f4. But let's see what other possibilities White had. He could have tried. No, first of all, he can never play queen f2 because queen h1 is just mate. So that's not a possibility. White can try bishop f1 in this position, but if you calculate, bishop f1 is just a mate in few moves. So here black can play queen h1 check, king f2, queen f3 check. Now the f3 pawn was unprotected because that's the weakness of the last move, where when white went for bishop f1, he unprotected this f3 pawn. So after king g1 and queen h1 check, king f2, queen h2 check, bishop g2 and queen g2. This is just mating. So bishop f1 is not also not an option. So instead my opponent went for bishop f4, seeing all of the other moves are really bad. You have to calculate how it's winning for you. You have sacrificed your material, you have the attack. Now it's very important that you finish off this game. So let's see how I continue. I went for queen h1 check, king f2, queen h2 check, and after king e3, I went for knight f5 check. Now, as you can see, after knight f5, all of these squares are not legal. King has to really step out to either d3 or d2 because this square is covered by my queen, and these squares are covered by my knight and bishop here. So he really king has to step out here. There is no other option. So he went for king d3. Now I took the bishop. Now after queen takes bishop, you can see that I'm completely winning here. Uh, as you can see evidently that I have so many pawns here and I'm materially up. So it should just be a matter of technique for me to finish him off now. So here after queen takes bishop, he played a really bad move. After which I just won this game very easily. So he went for queen f2. Now this is a blunder. If you want, you can pause the video here and try to work out why this is a blunder here. So here I went for bishop e4 check. As you can see, this f pawn is pinned. He can never really take on my bishop because his queen hangs. So after bishop f e4 check, king c3. So after bishop takes rook, it's just completely lost for white. I just went on to win this game easily after this move. So that's all about this game. Hope you learned a lot from this video as well. Now, if you think you have played any such interesting games, you can let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.